we knew that well over 1 million people were coming into Canada. And I thought, silly me, I thought the majority of those were going to be temporary foreign workers and asylum seekers and refugees. Not even close. The Liberals are so, I think, scared of losing their base that now they are putting out these absolutely god-awful, cringe media pieces now.
They're bad. You'll see in a moment.
And we're going to show you one with Justin Trudeau, and then we're going to annihilate it.
Immigration. Let's talk about it. In the last 2 years, our population has grown really fast, like baby boom fast. And increasingly, bad actors like fake colleges and big chain corporations have been exploiting our immigration system for their own interests. So we're doing something major. We're reducing the numbers of immigrants that will come to Canada for the next 3 years. Today, I'm going to let you in on what happened, where we made some mistakes, and why we're taking this big turn. There are two kinds of immigration in Canada. The one you probably think of most is permanent immigration, like when families come to Canada to settle and call it home. Every year, the government determines the right number of permanent residents that we want to admit. That's how it's been done for decades. But a plan that only talks about permanent immigration misses the other pathway, temporary immigration. Temporary residents are people who come to Canada for a limited time, like international students, temporary workers, and so on. They come to work a job or go to school. When the job is done or when they finish their degree, most return home. Some apply to stay as permanent residents, but most return home. So back to this year's plan. Historically, Canada's annual immigration plan just looked at permanent residents. The number of temporary students and workers that we admitted each year was left to the demands of the economy. It was usually a small proportion of our population, so it's never been a part of the long-term immigration plan. But after the pandemic, our economy came roaring back quickly, and we needed a lot of workers fast.
Canada is in the middle of a huge labor shortage.
Temporary foreign workers became such a significant part of our workforce that it'd be a mistake not to include them when we plan our immigration levels. So this year, we did exactly that for the first time. We laid out a plan that sets targets for both permanent and temporary residents. This way, we're getting the full breakdown of people coming into our country so we can prepare the homes and infrastructure needed to support them. Like I said, immigration is based on demand. When we set our targets, we look at every province and territory. We ask the premiers, what are the gaps in your workforce? Is your population growing or getting older? We field calls from businesses, CEOs, economic experts, all sharing their thoughts on where we should set our targets.
We've had a chronic shortage of labor for the last decade. It is the #1 issue of all manufacturers across Canada. So we think there needs to be more, push the pedal to the floor to bring more people into Canada because
Ontario is facing a generational labor shortage. 380,000 jobs are going unfilled.
It's no surprise that every sector has different wants and needs when it comes to immigration. But after the pandemic, they all came to us with the same message. After 2 years with closed borders, we need more people, more workers, fast. So we brought in more workers, and it was the right choice. It worked. Our economy grew. Restaurants and stores reopened, businesses kept running, but most importantly, in spite of lots of economists' predictions, we avoided the worst-case scenario, a recession. But some saw that as an opportunity to profit, to game the system.
So, Justin Trudeau showed a chart there, and it showed the chart of the immigration targets, and it didn't seem that bad. Because if you noticed, their scale went all the way up to 1.5 million. So, arranging the chart like that, it really flattens everything out, so it doesn't visually look as bad. So we wanted to show you what it actually is supposed to look like. Check this out. So this is that same chart. We took the numbers and we made our own chart. So on the left, 2014, 2015, that was under Harper. So the targets were around 260,000 permanent residents. By the time they were done, they were at 475,000 residents.
Almost double.
Now that red line is the percentage increase from 2015. So you can see that Justin Trudeau's Liberal government increased the permanent resident immigration targets by almost 90%. It's actually 87%. Now, the other interesting thing is those big jumps happened around the exact same time as they implemented the Century Initiative. Gee,
Color me shocked?
what a coincidence, folks. What a coincidence. So, no surprise that the Century Initiative caused all this badness in the country. And I find it also strange that he's saying, well, we need all these workers. We need all these workers. If the unemployment rate was like at 1%, I would completely agree with you. But why is unemployment continually going up, Justin?
Well, it's because the number of jobs being created is the same or less than the number of people who are coming into the country and are looking for work.
And a lot of these jobs are in government.
Yeah, they've increased the size of the public service by like 40%. That public service jobs take from the taxpayer, right? They don't give back to the economy. It's costing us to have all these people. Like, go back a few weeks ago and check out our interview with Franco Terrazzano from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. He was saying that for every one tax person, like IRS, I guess, in the United States, there's, so many Americans. And then there's 6 times fewer Canadians for every tax person, for every CRA person in Canada. Why do we need so many CRA individuals?
Right.
Like, why? It's crazy.
Now, the other problem that we're seeing is housing, right? And he may get into it. But here's another graph that we put together. So what this graph is permanent resident target versus housing completion. So in 2014, we had 260,000 new permanent resident immigrants come into Canada, and the housing completions were at 187,000. So not great, but it was quote unquote relatively close. Now, in 2015, it was at 190,000 completions, so that went up a little bit, but our permanent resident target didn't change. It was still at 260,000. As soon as the Liberals took power, you can see what started happening. And then, oh, look what happened again. Century Initiative took off, and look at what it did to the housing crisis. So the housing completions have basically increased at a very steady, slow rate. Meanwhile, our immigration completely took off. So for those of you that are interested and haven't seen our video on the Century Initiative, we are going to be putting it in the description after this stream, so you'll be able to see it there. Or you can just go to the Northern Perspective channel and just look for, search for Century Initiative, and you will be able to find it. So anyhow, let's keep going on Captain Gaslight here, and we have some more things to show you later.
We've seen way too many large corporations doing this.
The government says the program has been used to get around hiring Canadian workers in some instances.
Far too many colleges and universities used international students to raise their bottom line.
There are the diploma equivalent of puppy mills that are just churning out diplomas. There is fraud and abuse, and it needs to end.
Because they could charge these students tens of thousands of dollars more for the same degree. And then there are really bad actors who outright exploit people, who target vulnerable immigrants with promises of jobs, diplomas, and easy pathways to citizenship promises that would never come true. Looking back, when the post-pandemic boom cooled and businesses no longer needed the additional labor help, as a federal team, we could have acted quicker and turned off the taps faster.
The other thing to really pay attention during this little talk is the amount of cuts that are in it.
Yeah, there's so many jump cuts in this recording that I got dizzy. It was ridiculous. And I'm like, why are there so many jump cuts? It doesn't look nice, number one, but it also makes you wonder, like, what are they cutting? How many takes did this take? I mean, you and I do most of our stuff in one take.
Well, and any of you that have actually done any editing, that like you're noticing this. It's jarring when you notice it. But there are so many. But
it's bizarre. It's bizarre for something that's supposed to be like warm and fuzzy and reassuring. Oh, we're fixing our immigration. These are the problems with it, and now we're fixing it. But it's not. It's jumpy and it's jarring, like Ryan said.
Well, and he's also talking about this stuff like it's somebody else's fault. He's like, oh well, we had this exploitation, and you know, all these people coming in and they're getting. That's your job.
Well, and these students were coming in and going to these diploma mills, and and then you were letting them work up to 40 hours a week on top of that.
Yeah.
Like, whose fault is that?
100%. 100%. Like, that's nobody else's fault but yours, buddy. Like, it's not the provinces that let people into the country.
No, it's the federal government and his ministers.
Now, it is time to make the adjustments to stabilize the immigration system that we need and get it working right for Canadians for right now.
Immigration is primarily a federal job. We have the levers to rein it in, so we are.
This is a big change, a major cut to immigration, reducing permanent immigration levels by at least 20%.
A new string of measures to clamp down on temporary immigrants. That means a decrease in international students, temporary foreign workers.
Canada's new immigration plan is straightforward. Lower the number of new immigrants coming into Canada, both temporary and permanent. We're prioritizing permanent residents with the skills we need, like healthcare workers for our hospitals and construction workers who will build more homes. And those temporary residents who are already in Canada, some will apply to stay in Canada as permanent residents. Since they're already here, established and working, the added pressure put on communities is very low. Or they'll leave Canada when their temporary residency expires, reducing our population. Some temporary residents may turn to our asylum system when their visa expires as a shortcut to stay in Canada. Those claims will be analyzed and processed, and if their claim fails, they'll be sent home.
Did you hear that? And if their claim fails, they'll be sent home. It takes over a year, to the best of my knowledge, for these claims to even be assessed.
Well, and one thing that we keep hearing across the country is students are now filing for permanent residency. Now, here's some numbers for you.
Students are filing for asylum is what they're filing for. That was what the chart just said.
But they're also filing for permanent resident status as well. Like that's
yeah, I mean, they're being told that, oh, come to Canada, do your degree, and then you can apply for permanent residency. Right. But the ones that are like, oh, no, now it's time to go home, 14,000 of them this year alone have applied for asylum.
But here's some numbers for you folks. We were looking into this, and we knew that well over 1 million people were coming into Canada. And I thought, silly me, I thought the majority of those were going to be temporary foreign workers and asylum seekers and refugees. Not even close. So the refugees, the asylum seekers, and the temporary foreign workers made about 200,000, something like that. Ladies and gentlemen, 2023, there were 900,000 international students that came into Canada.
That's insane.
900,000. You know what it was in 2015 under Harper? 350 odd thousand. That's almost 3 times the amount of students that came into this country.
Well, and the crazy thing is they don't have to go to accredited universities or colleges. They can go to like Bob's College down on the strip mall down the street. And that counts as a college. Like, it's insane. There's no regulation.
So just like look at this. You have 240,000 homes completed in 2023. And you had almost 1.5 million people coming into the country.
Canada cannot support those numbers. You know, back in the 1800s when they needed people to come settle in Canada and build the country, then yeah, sure, it can support those numbers. After the war, when they needed to rebuild, sure, they could support big numbers, but not now. We cannot support these numbers.
And Trudeau's like, we're being responsible, and we're decreasing immigration. We're cutting it all the way down to 360,000. You're still 100,000 under if it was just permanent residents coming in. 100,000 under in terms of your housing starts and completions. But there's all these international students, and Mark Miller was like, oh yeah, maybe we should make some cuts to that. But in 2024, in the first 6 months, we were on track to breaking 2023, which was 900,000. Like, I'm just incredulous, and this is why I'm getting so animated about it. Like, I was not prepared for that number when I saw it. It was the most ridiculous thing that I'd ever seen. I thought it was fake. And then I looked at the previous year, and the previous year was 860-odd thousand. Like, the only number it's gone down instead of up under the Liberals was COVID. So...
But this is what happens when you have open border policies.
So
again, it's like me having 50 cats in the house. Would I love 50 cats in the house? Absolutely. But everybody's health and everybody's needs, everybody would have a lower quality of life, right? And that's what's happening in Canada. We have too many people for the amount of resources that we have available right now in the country, and everybody's suffering as a result. Instead, if the government wanted this many people, what they should have done was built the infrastructure first, made sure our healthcare system could handle it first, and then brought people in, not the other way around.
And there you go. So we're not gonna subject you to the rest of that Trudeau video, because honestly, it's just, you know, he's puffing his chest out saying we're being a responsible government, and you know, we're they're going to keep immigration low for the next 2 years, but then they plan on increasing it again after 2027.
Right. Because I doubt that they've dropped the Century Initiative plan in its totality.